Thank you for listening to Tara Lynn's A Geek Saga podcast. This episode features audio from a discussion panel that was recorded at DragonCon 2021.
Okay, so my name is Tara. I can be found across the web at A Geek Saga. I am the founder and organizer of Ice and Fire Con, which was the first ever Song of Ice and Fire Game of Thrones convention in the U.S. And I run a couple webcast podcasts. One of them is A Geek Saga, which is basically me being lazy and taking my DragonCon and other convention panel recordings and turning them into podcasts. And the other is Sagas and Sass, which is a genre series webcast where we actually, our entire first season covered the Grishaverse books and then, of course, the first season of Shadow and Bone.
Hi, my name is Nami. I go by Nami Sparrow on Instagram and YouTube, and I think there's also a Facebook somewhere, but I haven't updated it in a year's Instagram cross posts, though, so that's cool. I am also on the Sagas and Sass podcast with Tara, and these are the books that got me back into reading, and now they're a show, and I'm like, yay.
I'm Henry Hanks. I've been doing panels with DragonCon for 20 years or something, and I'm also starting up a podcast, What the Nerd podcast, the next few weeks. But in the meantime, I have discovered the show. I heard about it pretty much when the trailer came out, and I was pretty new to the whole Grishaverse, but I was hooked on it immediately. So I have not read the books, but I am very much into the show.
I mean, honestly, it's probably good that you haven't, because I know, speaking from ye old Game of Thrones at DragonCon experience, where we weren't allowed to talk about the books on the show panels for the longest time, it's hard to separate. Right. So we're going to do our absolute best not to go too in depth on really book specific stuff, and Nami and I are going to also not talk about anything from at least past book one of the Shadow and Bone, the Grisha trilogy, because that would be spoilers.
If there are any book fans in here who hears us start to say things about other books, just start hissing at us. Just be like, no, you're doing it.
Just out of curiosity, how many people here have read the books? Okay.
All right, so in conclusion, we're safe. This is a book.
Well, it looked honestly, that looked like it was about a 60-40 split. Maybe it might have been 65-35. So that's good to know, though.
Show fans are safe. We will keep you safe.
So I actually, weirdly enough, I read these books years and years ago, and I didn't know they were making a show until very, very recently. I mean, I think it was a few months before we started our webcast, which was last summer. About a year ago, maybe a little bit more, that I must have seen something, or maybe someone mentioned it on their, a friend mentioned it on their Facebook page, and I was like, wait, what? There's gonna be a Shadow and Bone TV show? Oh my God. And of course, as any of us who have, witnessed the the TV shows that come from the book series that we love and how they have turned out, it's always a big toss-up. So I was very nervous, but I think what I loved about it was from the beginning with all the advertising, how clear it was that Leigh Bardugo, the author, was very, very involved. But also just the casting, looked great from the beginning. And they were really great about advertising it. And then we get to, actual show release time. I mean, they were doing I think it was February or so. They did the live panels, a couple live panels. They
started doing a lot of teaser trailers as well. You could really tell that Netflix went hard with promo for this show, and it made me really happy. I, for one, was not a longtime book fan. I actually got into the books in 2019 when they did the initial cast announcements, because my friend is a really big fan of Six of Crows, and they super identify with Inej because they are Egyptian, and brown people power unite. And so they were like, hey, you should read this series. You're going to find a character that you immediately ID with. And then I was like, I don't know, I haven't read books in 10 years. I don't have the time. And then they just sent me the duology in the mail, and I was like, oh, so I'm reading it, I guess. So basically, I read the first Six of Crows, and then I was like, I feel like I'm missing a lot of things about this magic system. went back, sped through the original trilogy, and I was like, ah, yes, magic system. Finished it all. And here I am, very invested.
A thing that grabbed me right away was the costuming, for one thing, just sort of this like Eastern European Russian mixed with science fiction magic. It was just an interesting mix that no one would have thought of. I don't think. It was very creative.
Yeah, honestly, the costuming is one of the main reasons that I'm, like, very pleased with the show. Like, obviously, like, the casting, I'm very invested in the casting. The casting was lovely, and I'm very proud of it, and I can't wait to see them continue to put the work in to make the casting, like, visually diverse, and I hope we get the behind-the-scenes diversity as well. And then the costuming. As a book fan, I was like sketching out Kefta designs in my little notebook for years, and I was like, I say years, it was a year and a half. Like, who am I kidding? I was like sketching it out. I was like, let's go. Like, what's this like? Am I a little sad the battle Keftas aren't floor length? Yeah. Is it practical that they're not floor length? Absolutely. Is Zoya still running around in a floor length skirt in her fights? You go, queen. But so, you know, the costume design was so good, and we are Game of Thrones people here, so like as former, unfortunately current Game of Thrones people, like seeing another show that really highlighted embroidery in their costuming was so amazing, because like they came out here and they were like, yes, so we can do embroidery, or we can do embroidery. And we got the version in all caps, which I do appreciate.
Yeah, the corporalki Keftas especially were just absolutely gorgeous. So we were weirdly enough, we were talking about it this morning with some friends who have watched the show but not actually completed reading the books. So for those of you who haven't read the books, and I'm sure you might have seen some stuff about how, you know, about the storyline of the show, but of course it takes place, it's based on basically the entirety of the first book of the Grisha trilogy, Shadow and Bone, but it also features some of the Six of Crows storyline. However, what we get from the Six of Crows storyline, which is in the books that takes place much later in the time frame, but what we get from Six of Crows in the show is their backstories. So it was really, really nice. I mean, personally, I think they meshed it all really, really well by also, you know, having the Crows like actually meet Alina and stuff. But the backstories that you're getting, it's basically a far more detailed version. And in some cases, it was literally just like, Kaz had this big heist one time, and there's no description at all of what it was about. So I think they were really able to take what were super vague mentions or short, very brief, like half a chapter or maybe a whole chapter stories, and weave them into the storyline of the show, which is, you know, more so focused, of course, on Alina and the Darkling. So if you have not read the books, that's probably like the easiest description I can give you without spoiling, is that you actually got to jump ahead a lot. In a way.
It's really cool because a lot of the like reveals that you get in this duology are done gradually. And so you understand the character growth that these characters have had after the fact. And that is especially true in the case of Matthias and Nina, because you don't understand what their whole deal is, and you're like, why does she like him? He's the worst. Why is he even here? And like you get all of that here because you see what happened. You see how like they bonded and they changed. And also, can we talk about them? Because like I didn't really ship them, but like the show makes me ship them, and like here I am. They're just really cute together, and I can't help myself. And like, you know, in the actual books, like Alina and the Crows never actually meet. But the way that they do it manages to be just fan servicey enough that you're like, yes.
This is exactly how it should have happened.
Like, it makes sense in the world. I think the writers did a really, really good job of like taking what is a fandom that cares a lot about their stories and weaving a story that makes book fans happy while also giving show fans a story that is easy to track. Because one really great thing that the Inej and Kaz story did, because that's a story that is never told, aka this heist with Alina, but the story that they do tell is, well, Inej is still indentured to Tante Helene, and you get her whole story with Tante Helene and the story with how she's working with Kaz, and now how at the end of this series Kaz has the means to free her from her indenture. And that's a story that you don't see in the books. You're only told about it. And like, hey, sometimes like, what's that first rule of writing? Show, don't tell. We have a show here, and it's in a show.
It literally showed.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, I mean, yeah, it's just been amazing. I've just enjoyed all the twists, and I've also, it's been interesting because being new to it and not having read the books, they do introduce you to a lot of characters, and you know, it's interesting to kind of see these separate groups of characters and how they come together as the season goes on.
So I'm really curious for you, actually. So like as a book reader, we had like a very unique perspective of like always meta knowing what was going on and like kind of what was going to happen, knowing the connections before they happened. What was it like going into this series and not knowing anything?
Yeah, it was interesting because it does kind of drop you in the middle of it, but they explain in a very natural way. You know, they have to take this little boat and go into the Darkling, and it's you know, it's such a completely unusual, unique idea for everything in this. I thought was like, it wasn't like, well, this is like Game of Thrones. This is like, it was very unique and original to itself.
Yeah, I think a really cool thing that I saw was, so Leigh Bardugo did, I can't remember if this was in one of her fan events or if this was just a general like interview thing, but she talked about how the idea for the Fold came about, and it was, to her, it was, she wanted the physical manifestation of darkness and that claustrophobia of being surrounded and not being able to see and not knowing what was happening around you. And that was where the Fold was born from. Right. And then therefore, you know, that was where the whole story was born from. And, you know, if you go back and read like the original Shadow and Bone, it's like very dark. That Darkling-Alina relationship is not there. And like, it's, the other reason it is so dark is because this book was really personal to Leigh, and she has like written in things before that like she was in an abusive relationship at the time, and that's where this story came from. So it's like a really close story to her, and like it's wonderful to look at all of this stuff and like her experience as an author and like where these ideas like bloomed from. It's good. It's very good.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's amazing that she, you know, she got to not just have the rights to her stories bought, but she got to be as involved as she was, because like, and granted, you know, some authors, they sell their stories and it's a choice that they don't, you know, I mean, I know like with Martin, there was a point where he was like, I don't feel like doing this anymore with Game of Thrones. And he was involved to an extent, but like really past the first season, not much other than writing a couple episodes. So I'm hoping that Leigh Bardugo stays involved in the future, because like Nami was saying, like particularly the first trilogy, I'm sure, because of when she wrote it, why she wrote it, was such just a, like, it was had deep meaning to her in her personal life. I think that keeping like the whole relationship that she has with her characters alive is like really important. The changes that they made for the show with the Darkling and Alina relationship make it far more palatable. Because like honestly, in the original trilogy, it feels a little bit more like a Twilight-esque situation.
It's worse than Twilight.
Yeah. It's like Twilight, but like if Edward were, you know, actually evil, I guess.
Twilight with evil Edward.
Yeah. So it feels more like that than it feels, you know, like it does in the show, where it's almost not, you know, not necessarily BFFs on equal ground, but there's definitely, Alina has a lot more, I got the word I'm looking for.
Wow.
Agency.
Yeah, Agency.
It's like I slept too long last night. I somehow lost all my brain cells from sleeping too much. Yeah, Alina has a lot more agency in their relationship, and it's a lot more palatable in the show.
Yeah, and you know, that's actually a big part of like what, like, you know, Ben Barnes and Jessie May Lee specifically brought to the show, because there are a few interviews that they did and like a few talks that they did about like how they wanted to actually explicitly add consent to the Darkling and Alina's relationship, because that is hecka not there in the books. And so it's there now, and you know, let me say it now. You can ship Darklina from the show. You are allowed. It's officially palatable.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the thing with a writer can describe it in a book, but when an actor brings it to life, they can put in little nuances that you may not have been able to describe as well in the book. So
yeah, it was really nice to see, especially because like Ben Barnes is so charming. Send help. All right, that's it. I'm not going to do a whole Ben Barnes aside because that would be a lot, but for the record.
And I'm also trying to think, even though obviously like we get the Darkling and Elena relationship in the show, and we get a little bit more in depth into, like we were talking about earlier briefly with Inej and Kaz and their relationship, which is it's like, clear that they like each other, but it's both they're both traumatized individuals liking each other. So I don't want to get too much in depth about the trauma because we know
it's good trauma.
We know about Inej's, but we don't know about Kaz's yet. But yes, they are two very traumatized individuals who are struggling, to figure out how to, be who they are and also love each other in a way.
They are currently doing their best.
Yes, yeah.
It is also currently not very good, but don't worry.
It's very awkward.
Get there.
It's very awkward.
Yeah. I had to say, you mentioned Kaz, when you see his first appearance and you're like, this guy looks like a badass. I'm sure this, not being a reader, I'm sure this is like a fan favorite. And then I saw the art based on the book, and it was like they literally just pulled him out of the book and made him a person.
Yeah, they did a great job. I honestly, I'm gonna let my biases show here. I think the best casting they had was Jesper, because I think Kit just, right? Everybody can agree. Like the whole cast is lovely and amazing, but Kit just brought that chaotic Jesper energy to a level that I did not think was possible. And then he got on screen and I was like, oh no, he's real. He was so perfectly lovely. And I know we all thought that goat was getting sacrificed to the background.
Yes, actually.
But
what's the real argument? Best casting, Jesper or Milo?
Best comedic duo for
Hashtag
Jesper.
actually both.
Yeah, it's so good. And Kit is just very charming and he does a great job with Jesper in the show. I hope in the next season we're going to get an explicitly bisexual Jesper, because he is, and that would be lovely. But as of right now, Jesper is absolutely favorite. He's doing great, and then he does this gun tricks, and I'm like, yeah. I'm also really excited for the future conversations with certain people that's going to come up when he's going to be like, yes, I love Milo, and they'll be like, who is this? Is this your ex? Also, I really need to know, what city was Milo left in? Because I need to know what city he was left in.
I think it was Osalta. I think he was left in
Osalta. There was 3 seconds of was he left in Novosibirsk? Because if he was left in Novosibirsk, I would have thrown a fit.
I'm just I figured it was Osalta, and I honestly would have to go back and rewatch the show for the 3rd time in a row.
It would be worth it
to be sure. But I probably could just find the episode. But yeah, I mean Jesper, he has that bullet. He had that bullet necklace, and was it Jesper? Somebody who was
it was Mal. And
Mal,
yeah.
Oh, Mal, yeah.
Also, how do you pick a lock with a bullet? How do you pick a lock?
Yeah, it's got gunpowder.
You're destroying the lock.
Bullets have gunpowder.
He thought he was going to shoot his hand off.
I thought you put the gunpowder behind the bullet, and the gunpowder goes boom, and then it pushes out the bullet.
The gunpowder is in there.
Yeah,
this is fine. I'm really good at firearms.
It's like a striking pin. It's inside a little capsule, and the bullet's the little thing on the top, and there's gunpowder in between.
You've all had a engineering lesson.
Well, listen, if you guys ever thought you didn't know something that was common knowledge, remember this time that this lady got up on this panel and straight up didn't know how bullets work? Did he pick the lock with the bullet? God, I'm just gonna go hide under this table for a bit. But nah, man, plot convenience goat and plot convenience bullet is my favorite thing in the world.
Yep.
Sometimes things can just be fan service.
I mean, Milo the Goat has a Twitter, and it's hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it's official. It's a fan-made Twitter, but it has been absolutely just hilarious.
I'm pretty sure, I'm 75% sure there's either an Instagram or a Twitter for Milo that was started by one of the guys. either
Oh,
Kaz's
maybe.
actor or Jesper's actor, because they were liking the channel. They liked the channel before, like, everything had actually happened. And, like, it was one of those things that I was like, this is suspicious.
But I don't know, the Milo the Goat Twitter feed is great, so if you have not followed it, I'm pretty sure it's just at Milo the Goat.
Milo the Goat is the goat, so...
Yeah, it's the goat, and yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
Did you guys watch the cast, like, commentary thing on Netflix as well?
There's a cast commentary.
Yeah. Milo the Goat is actually two goats. They had two goats to play Milo, and one of them was, like, super energetic and the other one wasn't. And they had, like, it was, like,
For different
pros
scenes.
versus, and they did, like, trivia and stuff in it. It was
I love it.
really
That's
funny
so
if you haven't
good.
watched it.
Yeah.
I'm guessing they had to give them the calm goat for Kaz to carry.
Yeah.
Say the Jersey goat and then the doer goat.
Yeah, I somehow missed that there was a cast commentary thing. I have watched all of the online panels and stuff that they did prior to the show airing. And also, like, there was a Q&A with Lee Bardugo when King of Scars came out. That was also it was pretty show focused, even though it was supposedly about the new book.
I think there's this like Netflix after party show they do.
Okay.
And they had an episode
There's
about
a spoof reel as well.
But I also I refuse to believe that Milo the Goat, in my world, Milo the Goat is still only one existent goat.
Yeah, I cosplayed Jesper yesterday, and I'm not saying that I bought my childhood stuffed animal goat with me to this convention for the purpose of cosplaying Milo, but I did, and I would like to say that she is a very good cosplayer.
Great.
She does look quite like Milo. Hashtag screen accurate Milo.
Well, so I was saying, you're
Go
talking
ahead.
about social media. One thing that I did assume, like as the show was going on, actually, I was watching it. I went and looked up the Instagrams, the different actors, and they had a lot of not cool behind-the-scenes photos, and you could just tell they had a blast making the show.
Yeah.
It's always fun to see when like the people making it are having a good time, and that always leads to a better show. So.
The actor who plays Fedor, if you are not following him on social media, you absolutely need to follow him on social media.
Didn't he bring his like dad to set with him or
Probably.
something? There's
He's having a really good time, and also he dyed his hair blonde right now, so like that's a thing that's happened. But so like there's a lot of behind the scenes that he has of like, and there's like specifically one video he has of like the actor who plays Ivan doing like a Russian dance, and then he like falls over. It's really good.
The scene where Ivan and Fedor are interacting at the ball is the most adorable thing ever.
Yeah, I can't believe they made us ship these boys. And
Hold on, for those of you who couldn't hear it, the scene where Ivan and Fedor were interacting at the ball was very adorable, is what they said.
Yeah.
Wasn't expecting Heartrender husbands to happen, but
Yeah,
I feel like
Heartrender
we need
husband.
the Shadow and Bone blooper reel. I just have a feeling that would be a lot of fun.
I'm just imagining at one point them like actually smashing that macaron in each other's face, and I'm like, yep, that would track. That would
there is a
track.
blooper reel.
There's
So-
a blooper reel?
There is a
Okay,
blooper reel.
I gotta find that.
Oh, yeah. So we briefly, and before we started going off on the Milo tangent, we're talking about Mal, because I kind of totally forgot he existed for a minute. I'm so sorry. I don't like Mal at all in the books, and like it's like
fine, yeah.
In the
the
books-
show he is so like, honestly, that's another thing that this show did really, really, really well, was the casting and the writing of Mal and of his relationship with Alina.
Yeah,
Because
in the books, I
he's
like
kind
none
of
of the men. In the books, I
Yeah,
like
that's-
none of the men.
That tracks, except for Kaz.
No, I don't. Well, in the original trilogy,
Okay,
I
original
like
trilogy,
none of the
yeah,
men.
yeah.
And
Yeah, that tracks.
I ship Alina and herself. No, but he's like an Alina love interest specifically.
Yeah.
Tolia's lovely. Tolia can do no wrong. You will meet Tolia. You will love Tolia. You will enjoy Tolia.
He's like a warrior poet, so like you can't not love him.
He's a warrior
or a
poet.
poet warrior.
Poet warrior.
Probably
Probably poet first, right?
Yeah.
He just wants to make poetry, and I guess he'll also stab if you want him to. But so the thing I love about show Mal is that like I always objectively liked book Mal because I started reading after I got the casting. So I read from the point of view as like, orphans who both like don't look like normal Rovkins who are being othered and they have to stick together. And of course he's jealous. He's just a sad boy. But also at the same time, I'm like, he's a jealous boy and he's like not doing great. But then the show just gives us book 3 Mal energy by that time he's like actually grown up and been a good person. And you're just like, yes. And also like all of their orphanage flashbacks when they just laid in the grass and held hands and like he had the bunny with him that one time. And I'm just like, oh God, so good.
I just had to tell myself like that bunny survived, right?
Right.
Like,
Oh, of course.
This was little boy Mal, not like tracker Mal.
Yeah, that's
going
little
out
boy
and
Mal.
killing all
That
the
bunny's immortal. Like it's doing great. But speaking of, this is going to take
its name is Otis and it's friends with Milo the goat.
Oh my God, amazing. So, I speak about Milo, and I speak about Mal, and then I have to go to Zoya, obviously, specifically because Mal rejects her in this scene, whereas in the book they were hooking up, or heavily implied to have hooked up. And the reason I specifically bring this up is because in that scene where he rejects her, you see her amplifier for the first time, and how it's the wolf claw embedded in her wrist. And for those of you people who just watched the show, the amplifiers are not described as embedded in your skin. They're described as like permanent jewelry, so it's like it seamlessly closes around your wrist if it's a bracelet, which is what Zoya's is, but you cannot get it off. So
you can, but if you take it off, then
if you take it off, you ruin the
connection.
power. But like bad. You can, it is very technically not permanent, but I love that change because it makes the bond of the amplifier to the Grisha and the fact that it is one only and that permanence so much stronger. And it also very much primes you for the amazingly done body horror of the collar. Because listen, I know we all hated it because I straight up had to pause the show because I felt nauseous and sick to my stomach. But it is so good. And it is so well done. Like, it takes a lot to make me watch a TV show and go, excuse me, I need a break. That was too much. But this was it, and it was so well done, and it made me genuinely disgusted, and I was like...
That did its job.
I actually missed it the first time I watched the show, and part of this was because I was not missed the fact that it was in her, like in Alina's collarbone, because ew, like, and I couldn't look at it, and I think it was because I couldn't look at it every time she came on screen with it. I was going like this, and I missed the first time through that when she like accepts that power at the end of the show, it goes down into her. And I was like, I don't know if I can watch like seasons of this show with this thing like sticking out of her collarbone. Like, I'm just gonna be going like this every time she's on screen. This can't be good. But yeah, thankfully I think somebody it might have been on our webcast or something. One of them was like, yeah, no, she like withdraws it into her, and I was like, oh, okay, that's so much better. I think I can deal with that.
It's better now.
Like, I can deal with this. And also, I mean, the symbolism of her, like, finally accepting her power and accepting the amplifier like that.
And I think it's so much deeper, too, though, because, like, you see the other Grisha, like, clearly wear their amplifiers visibly. And, like, the fact that a part of accepting her power is also, like sort of absorbing and taking in this like incredible like violation that was done to her and like making it her own, but also like being like, I'm through this and I'm not going to make it visible anymore because this does not define me. And like, I don't know, that was like me being really like poetic and reading into things, but I saw a lot of things in that symbolism, let me tell you. It was very good. A+.
Yeah.
So we're about 30 minutes in, and this is usually the point where I like to ask for audience questions. Now, please, if you can move, there are microphones. So, like, we ask you to use the microphones because otherwise the people on the opposite ends of the room might have trouble hearing.
Take a look at this lovely gentleman.
Yes, he is modeling how you utilize the microphone.
He is Vanna Whiting the microphones for us. Please do not lick the microphones. That is not COVID safe. That is not existence safe in general. Do not lick the microphones without a pandemic. Thank you.
Hopefully you're not speaking from experience.
I'm sorry, what was that? Is it on?
Paco Rollins.
Oh my God.
Oh.
Yeah.
What do you think about his character, and this is unfortunately specifically a book to show adaptation of like what do you think how that translated. Personally, I was very unsatisfied because Pekka is seen as this very conniving man, and what we see in the show is very brute strength. So what was your take on that, and especially his relationship with cats?
For me personally, this was one of those castings that, like, that was not how I pictured Pekka. I also hadn't pictured Pekka because I actively tried not to think about Pekka because
his name is Pekka. Like,
ew. But yeah, you're right. I think that was also what threw me the most about his casting was the fact that it was very, like, his portrayal was brute force, and that is not what Pekka is in the books. And I hope what we'll get in the future is that we're going to see more of that conniving part of him, because I believe that you can be a brute force gangster and also be conniving, and I have a lot of experience with gangsters, but I hope we're going to see more of his cunning, because like his whole backstory with Kaz is very cunning based, and you don't see that in the Pekka you see now. You say, yes, it's me. I'll have my lackeys punch you to get good stuff.
And you mentioned like the casting, like he also just seems, he's just very like hard and like old, and like, you know, he's of course supposed to be older, like maybe middle-aged, like in his 40s, I would think. But he's supposed to be a sort of, the point about Pekka Rollins in the books is that he's supposed to be this sort of soft-looking fellow that like can fool people.
Exactly.
And like this guy just looks mean.
Exactly.
And they portray him that way too. Like you said, he's just like, you know, here's my thugs. They're going to punch you. They're going to kill you. It's fine.
And, you know, I think a part of that is I'm very interested to see how they will make him look soft, and if that is even possible. And the other thing is that I literally pictured him as, like, you know, very dad bod. And I was
at
like...
best, I pictured him like big dude.
I pictured dad bod at best. And I was like, I don't know how this guy's going to look non-threatening. He oozes threatening from his pores, but I guess we'll see.
As someone who didn't read the books, what was your impression of Pekka?
I was like...
No, she's looking at Hank.
Oh, my impression? Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think definitely threatening or seeming, but yeah, I'm not sure how going forward it will come across, but yeah. Again, yeah, it's been interesting to hear people's expectations from the book versus, you know, what the show did. I felt, just from the glancing around at some of the artwork and stuff, I felt like they got a lot of things correct as far as how the author imagined it to be.
Thank you.
So I guess Netflix is kind of nefarious for canceling series, like after a couple seasons, some say too soon. How optimistic are we that they will carry this series all the way through based on available information?
So I dipped my toes into book fandom last year, in that, like, so if you are a fan artist or a fan fiction writer, there's usually like a big bang event for like fandoms where they'll put together like writers and artists, and you'll like write a story, like a fan for a story, and like do art for it. And based off of that, I got like my entryway into the book fandom, and dear Lord, is it huge. Mm-hmm. Like, it was already rather big before this show came out, and I am like 97% sure that they would riot. And there are a lot of there's like a very good combination of like teenagers and like angry middle-aged women who could easily go Karen mode. Yeah, so like it's one of those things that, like, you know, I think they could try to cancel it, but I think there would be many calls to the manager about why they can't.
The manager of Netflix.
The manager of Netflix.
Yeah, excuse me, Mr. Netflix.
I think they've had a lot of success with The Witcher, and they have multiple spin-offs, and I think that was sort of their idea. This will be the next Witcher, the next novel with a big fan base, or video game in that case as well. So you know, I know they seem to be speaking right to the fan base in the Grishaverse, and they seem to like they seem to have hired someone from social media who knows what they're talking about, I guess. So that's optimistic.
That's what I was going to say. They really, Netflix, when they want something to succeed, they really, really push it. They really, there are plenty of Netflix shows where I'm like, what the heck? Where did this show come from? I've never heard of this. And it just pops up and it's available all of a sudden. The most recent one being, oh my gosh, Cherry, something. Oh my gosh, it's a girl from Alita Battle Angel, but it's
I know what you're talking about.
The show is actually really good. It's a limited series anyway, but it's one of those things where nobody knew it was even coming, and then all of a sudden it's on Netflix. That is not what they did with Shadow and Bone. They were pushing this 8 months or a year in advance, and I also like Nami was saying, the book fandom is absolutely big enough to carry it, even if they hadn't gotten a whole bunch of new fans from the show. So I now there are 7 books total, right? The last 2 books that came out are kind of like their own standalone thing. It's still the same world, and a lot of the same characters that you meet in the first 5 books, but I think that there's an absolutely very, very good chance that we will get through the end of the Shadow. I don't think there's any chance they will cancel it before we get through the end of the original Grisha trilogy.
Yeah.
Whether or not we'll get the gigantic heists, from Six of Crows, or get into the King of Scars duology, I don't know. But for sure, we're going to get at least the 3 seasons to get us through the original trilogy. And I think that if they continue with the quality that the first season had, that there's very little chance that they won't want more.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's interesting, I was on a panel just yesterday about Jupiter's Legacy, which came out around the same time, and was canceled and cost a whole lot of money. This looks like it cost a lot of money, I have no idea. But obviously they renewed it, so that's a positive. that I think this show was more successful than some of the other things they were pushing.
Oh, for sure. But again, a lot of Jupiter's Legacy was one where it was within a month before it came out that I knew it existed. But I also don't know that Jupiter's Legacy, I don't know what their comic book fandom was, but I don't think.
Yeah, it's not as big as Shadow and Bone, I don't think.
Well, and I also I keep saying that the Grisha verse, fandom was really big. It wasn't big it certainly wasn't Tolkien big, and it wasn't even Game of Thrones big, but while it might not be the most gigantic, I don't even think it was Hunger Games big before the Hunger Games movies came out. But what it is a very, very passionate fandom, extremely.
I also think
passionate.
there's a very niche group of it, in that you've come to fandom from the Reddit side of stuff, and I think there's a very large portion of this fandom that doesn't know how Reddit works.
Yeah.
So
there's a large portion of people who don't know how Reddit works.
Yes, that too. So I think they're definitely a bigger fandom than you think, and I think the other thing is that let me put it this way. My dad is a nerdy person, but he also would not be interested in the Shadow and Bone series. But then he told me, literally as he was driving me to the airport for this convention, he was like, yeah, what are you cosplaying this weekend? Oh, wait, Shadow and Bone? I watched that. And I'm like, you watched it?
Wow.
What? He didn't even, he was like, yeah, it was number 1 and it looked cool. And I was like, if you could get my dad to watch random shit, and let's be fair, yeah, he's a nerd. He watched all of Game of Thrones with me, comes to San Diego Comic-Con with me. But still, if you can get random adjacent nerds to watch something like this, and if it's appealing to them on that broader basis, I think you have a really good chance of, staying alive. Also, I don't mean to distract us all from questions, but I also need to point out to our next question asker, who is the gorgeous Sun Summoner herself.
So we talked about how to incorporate Six of Crows, they had to add these new storylines, and so we got a bunch of new scenes. So what was your favorite scene that wasn't in the books?
Okay, so I'm gonna just not even let anybody else speak because I have a big one.
This is a Nami co-opt over here.
I'm sorry, I need to steal the show because the show was stolen for me by this moment. So Inej is my favorite character, and then closely followed by Zoya. But Inej, because I read Crows first, and Inej getting to meet Alina was amazing. And Inej's when you meet her in the books, she's a cold-blooded killer. So having her story now be she doesn't want to kill, and she's kind of coming to terms with that with her religion and with her saints, is really, really powerful. Especially because the story culminates with her actually meeting Alina, defending Alina, and then Alina giving her one of her own knives in a way to, after she throws, so, you know, she like yeeted hers all off the skiff because she was like, gotta fight these evil bats. And then, you know, Alina gives her a new knife to replace hers that she lost. And it is essentially, to Inej, it is one of her saints telling her that it is okay for her to use violence, which is not the message I'm going for here. This is the message that Inej was going through in her character development. Let's not stab people. But so, you know, it was a really touching moment, especially because, as I hope we will see in the show, Inej names her knives after saints. And all I could imagine was that knife that Alina gave her becomes her knife that is named Sancta Alina. So it was just a really good tie-in for Inej to meet her idol. And it made her character journey of not being able to kill sort of make sense for her, and for like to go beyond that and be like, I can defend my family now, and like I know it's okay for me to do that. And, you know, I'll admit, I was team started the show and was like, what do you mean the assassin doesn't kill? And then we get to this part and I'm like, all right, I see the journey. I like it. That was good. And obviously that was the best moment, but if anybody else has like non-best moments that they want to talk about.
Or well, I mean, you didn't read the books, but what was your favorite scene in the show? I guess is probably
favorite scene in the season. Let's see. I really liked obviously like the climactic scene with you know going into the fold and you know having the dragon beast or whatever come in. I was just you know, seeing the twists and seeing that some of the characters return against the Darkling. That was really just being able to kind of see a lot of these storylines come together, and of course knowing that he's not dead and at the end was also kind of a nice twist. So I was just transfixed the whole time. So it's hard to pick like one, but that was that was really good.
It's really difficult for me to say like a scene that wasn't in the books. To be honest, the books are like they have their moments where they're like a little bit amusing, but like the show really like brought out the amusing side of things in like a way that didn't seem ridiculous. So like off the top of my head, and it's been a while. I think I watched it for the third time or second time, whatever, third time back in like May. So it's been a couple months since I watched it. Off the top of my head, I'm picturing the scene where Alina runs away from Bagra and comes out of like the tunnels, and she's just looking around, and she just climbs into the carriage, and Jesper's standing over there. He just like, she's exactly who they're looking for, and he's just like, you gotta be kidding me, right? Like that or Milo scenes are probably not necessarily the mall with the bullet scene, but like just any scene with Jesper and Milo is just great.
Yeah, the moment where like they're driving away and Kaz is like, what do you mean we got it? And he's like, nah man, we got it. We got it. And like book fans will know how important that is because Kaz don't trust anybody. Yeah. He needs to be in control. But the fact that he's like, all right, I believe you, Jesper, but also like, dude, what do you mean we got it? We don't got also, anything.
It really seems like every time they go into their like little schemes, like both in the show and in the books, it doesn't really change from one to the other. Things shouldn't work out and shouldn't work out and shouldn't work out, and then it's like, oh, magically this one, like somehow they even if they didn't quite plan for this exact way of things happening, it worked anyway.
Big heist energy.
Yeah.
Yes. And not being a book reader, but seeing the Crows with Elena and see them kind of come together, and people who literally don't know each other and having to work together, that'll be an interesting thing going forward. So I was intrigued by that.
I'm excited. For sure. All right, we're going to go to our lovely Darkling here first, and then we'll come to the pink shirt.
No question, I was just, to reassure you, the last time we saw Milo was in Krabirsk, not Novokrabirsk.
Okay. As long as it wasn't Novokrabirsk. Yeah. For some reason I was thinking Osalta, but we're good on Milo then. Milo the goat lives forever.
Hey Darkling, in the words of Zoya, I love you.
So my question was, what did you think of their interpretation of the Volkra and then what we saw of the Nichovoya?
Creepy as heck. See, When I was reading, I did my very best to not decide what the Volcra were looking like because they were scary. And I don't like scary. Yeah. And then they happened, and I was like, oh, this is terrible. I love it. I'm also really happy that we got to see the Nicheovia because I was not expecting to see them this episode. No. But like you said, the ending scene where you. Like, us book fans obviously knew that he was back, but, like, the fact that they gave it to show people as well instead of waiting until the next season was, like, A+ good marketing. But also the visual impact of that ending, they were so scary. I do not like it.
And for those of you who haven't read the books, the Nichevoya they're basically like the manifestation of the Darkling's inner darkness. So every time he summons them, he is also like pulling away from his own like life energy and turning even worse and darker and more evil. It is very like
it's like also
his name being and I know they don't really refer to him much. They don't really use the Darkling term in the show that much, but like wow, it's just very very emo. This whole thing is so emo.
I think the casting of Ben Barnes was a really good decision because the way he's described in the books, it's like slim anime emo boy. And like that was my type like 15 years ago, but like let's be fair, everybody's type is Ben Barnes. You can be a lesbian or a straight man and you will still be like, yeah, that's an attractive human being. So it was really good. And also the fact that like he truly is older than the rest of the cast, and he's just like, it's me, Dad, kids, do you want to hang out? his energy on social media with the rest of the cast is so much like, I hang out with my friends, and they like me, even though I'm old, and it's just so wholesome and good, and I'm just like, I'm here for it. But yeah, no, the creepy. I did not have specific thoughts beyond... Not a fan, which makes me perfectly a fan.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who didn't read the book, like, how did you feel the Volcra, and it's hard to even describe what exactly they are, because they are also, in their own way, I'm not going to say it, they are also, in their own way, a manifestation of darkness. Don't worry, I wasn't going to spoil
Everything's a manifestation of darkness.
But they aren't being pulled from the Darkling himself, like, so the Nichevoya looking very much like, almost like Dementors in a way, but the Volcra they're monsters. They are absolutely just monsters.
Yeah, I was just having followed other literature, you do kind of reference back, okay, Dementors, Harry Potter. But yeah, they were creepier and scarier than anything.
Yeah, I also was getting like vaguely Ringwraith vibes, like all that good old darkness monster wrapped into one scary darkness package.
Yeah. But that just like so much of the show was not just the costumes, the effects, just the look of everything. I think they nailed it.
The vibes.
Yeah.
Hashtag vibes only.
Thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Darkling, because in the books versus in the show, it seems like that scene with the Darkling and Mao on the boat at the end, it's a little bit changed from that whole interaction where the Darkling seems to be very obsessed with Mao and trying to get information from Mao, where it doesn't, at least to me, it didn't seem to translate from the books. So do you think that someone who is, centuries old would be that obsessive about all these little things?
I mean, to me, it very much reads like a hyperfixation. When you are alone for a very long time and you find the one thing in your mind that can erase all of your mistakes and also help you fix everything and make it perfect in the way that you think it can, like the Darkling sees from Alina. Like, she's literally... Imagine you spent 400 years of just doing the same mistake and being like, oh, it wasn't me. And then somebody comes up and is like, well, I can make people believe you did no mistakes. And he's like, oh, shit, this is it. Sorry, am I allowed to curse?
You did it already.
I'm sorry.
We'll cut it out later in editing.
For $20.
Hey, all right, cool. I'll pay the filthy mouth tax. But so, to me, it really reads like that one thing that he needed to for his salvation was finally in his reach. So he was going to do whatever it took to keep it safe. And we already talked a little bit about how the relationship between Mal and Alina in this show is much more solid. It's very much book 3, that like connection, versus the book 1 like weird jealousy dynamic we've got going on. So they are closer, and that relationship is legitimately a threat this time. So I think to him, he's like, yeah, don't sweat the small things, but also like this is the one thing. Like,
but also at the same time, he literally could just wait for like 50 years until Mal dies, and then.
Does that man look like a patient man?
I mean, he's waited 400 years.
Yeah, well, you are logically, obviously very correct. Like, sir, just sit down. He will die from natural causes. But also impatience is the vibes that I get from this man.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the thing.
Why the fist fight?
He's been patient, but he's only been patient because he didn't have any way not to be, right? And now Alina is right there, right in front of him, and all he sees is Mal, and he sees her connection to him as something that will very possibly, harm his ability to manipulate her, which is. I mean, it's the same way. It's actually not really that much different in the books. Like he keeps them away from each other in the books too, because he knows that they grew up together. I mean, he sees their brief interaction, I think, like right after she does her first like sun summoning, and he meets her in Kirby or wherever it was on the one side of the fold, so yeah, he's been very, very patient, but he's been patient because he literally had no choice, and now she's right there in front of him, and he's like, I'm done with this shit. Honestly, God, that's my fault too. I'm gonna have to go to. I gotta go to the ATM. I gotta go to the ATM. Apparently,
I'll just put my whole credit card in. It's fine.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Hi. So two things. One's a question, one's not. Are you guys aware of how Ben Barnes got cast as the Darkling?
Pretty sure Lee had always pictured him, right? Or like Lee was like, I love you.
Yes, he was a fan favorite. He printed out Tumblr posts about.
Oh my god! Yes, he did.
That he should be the Darkling in the show, and brought it to Lee and the producers, and was like, "Here's my audition."
Wow, what a wholesome man!
Wow,
what a bean!
I just wanted to share that because I thought it was really interesting.
Thank you, though. I did not know that. That's
that was
hilarious.
amazing.
My question, though, is if you guys were in the world of Shadow and Bone, what small science, the magic system, would you want to practice?
So I would want to practice. I would want to be a squaller, like my girl, but I would be a material key, because as a cosplayer, I am obviously a material key already. How about you, Tara?
I would want to be a heartrender. I would probably be a squaller.
How about you? What you got?
Yeah, probably Heartrender might be a good one. I don't know. There's a lot of cool things.
There's a lot of subsets that you don't really think about, honestly.
And I presume you might be finding out about more. I read the books. There'll be more subsets. Maybe.
We will learn more about the magic.
Yeah.
It's going to be so fun.
I mean, I will say that the subsets are pretty set. Like there's the Corporalkies, who are the healers and heartrenders, the Squallers who are, or the summoners who are Squallers, Sun, Dark, and
Fire and Water.
Oh, Inferni and
Tidemakers.
Tidemakers, thank you. I was blanking on the water one. And then Materialki, which are the fabricators and alchemies. Yes, alchemies. Yes. Thank you. Gosh, I feel good that I only missed 2 of those, honestly.
That was pretty impressive, yeah.
What about you? Since you asked the question, you get to answer it too.
I would probably want to be a Corporalki, Heartrender, or Healer.
Nice.
Yeah. It's like I would really want to be a heartrender, but I know I've taken all the quizzes and they all say I would be a squaller. Damn it!
I would.
Quizzes, okay.
I would feel really mean if I was a heartrender.
See, I'm not a mean person, and I think that's why I want to be a heartrender. It's like I want to be able to do this, even though I know I never would actually be able to.
Yeah, I gotta take that quiz.
Okay, I think we got time for one more question, and then we got to wrap up.
I
didn't read the books, and I didn't want to look this up online because just in case of spoilers,
Wise.
It's hurt me before.
Same.
And I was just trying to see if you could speak to the age thing with.
Yes. Okay.
Because some of them don't live forever, and some of them live forever, or not live forever, or kind of forever, and it just was. Could you sort that out?
So it is a bit all over the place.
It's vague.
But it is intentionally vague in the series, and that the only people that we truly know that have lived a very long time as Grisha are specifically the Darkling and his mother. But we also know so within the books, it is explicitly stated that when you are a Grisha, if you do not practice your powers, it sort of like withers you. Mm-hmm. And when you practice your powers, it makes you more alive and it makes you have that natural glow, right? It's what we all wish we could do with that highlighter. It's like you wore pretty highlighter all the time, but right? It looked totally natural. So, it sort of goes a bit beyond that, in that we start to learn that the more powerful a Grisha is and the more tied into their power that they are, the longer they can live, the more they practice their art. So potentially, all Grisha have the power to live for very long times. And many Grisha do live to be, spry elderly folk. But there are specific characters who, as you go through the books, are described as explicitly having the ability to live for a long time. One of them is Alina. So Alina, the Darkling, I do not know why we know she can, but the Darkling straight up goes, this is my girl. She gonna live forever.
Well, I think it's, as far as I can tell, it's something to do with the sun and dark summoners, because while all Grisha will live longer than their non-Grisha counterparts,
so see, I would
they're like the age that Bagra is also explained, and of course the Darkling as well. I mean, he still looks very, very young, but he is very, very, very old, like older than the oldest living Grisha.
400, yeah.
Yeah, so
except his mommy. His mommy is older than him.
I would hope so, anyway. That would be weird. But yeah, so I think it's as of I mean, I don't want to say too much, but like there's little explanation as to why, but it seems like the sun and dark summoners will live just 5 ever.
Yeah, and
whereas the rest of the Grisha, they don't get that, but they get,
So I actually do want to take 3 seconds to correct you here, because it's Rule of Wolves. Yeah, so there's stuff in Rule of Wolves about how some other Grisha do have the potential to live that long.
That's late.
But that is,
we're not talking about these
spoilers, so we ain't talking about that. But so technically all Grisha can. Currently, most Grisha don't. Also good on you for not looking up spoilers, because that is me.
Don't do it.
I live in a place of like spoilers aren't real to me anymore, because I always look up cosplay references, and then it's like so-and-so character, and then it's like so-and-so character dies, and I'm like, really? Again?
I was confused about something that was happening in Storm of Swords, and I looked up something about Catelyn Stark on the wiki, and I got spoiled for the Red Wedding like 60 pages before I read it. And this was years before the show came out, but I was like, come on, man, spoiler cut.
Google needs to be less efficient.
Well, Wiki needs to be have required spoiler cuts.
Thank you, I like your outfit.
All right, so I mean we're at 2:00. We got to wrap up, but thank you guys so much for coming. Hopefully we'll get more Shadow and Bone content next year. Hope to see you at some Game of Thrones panels later this weekend, or Tolkien. I'm on some of those too.
We think y'all are neat. Please watch the show more.
Thank you for listening to the Geek Saga podcast. If you like what you heard, please check out other Geek Saga entertainment endeavors, including the Sagas and Sass webcast and podcast and Ice and Fire Con.